When you're playing piano, most of the magic is happening in your fingers. But your feet play a role as well, especially your right foot, which is controlling the sustain pedal. On a real instrument, you might find 2 or 3 pedals. The sustain pedal is always on the right. As the name suggests, this pedal sustains the sound. Without it, each key produces a sound just while it is pressed. As soon as I lift the key, the sound stops. But once I push down the sustain pedal, the sound becomes independent of how long I hold a note with my finger. I can hit a key very shortly, and yet the sound continues until I lift the sustain pedal. This is really useful because quite often you want a certain sound to continue, but you can't hold the keys with your fingers because they need to play other notes or because your hand needs to change its position. Let's take the waltz pattern we used earlier as an example. In this case, the left hand is required to jump between the bass note and the chords. Without the sustain pedal, this means the bass note and the chords won't be heard together, and there will be audible gaps between them. Now listen to how different this sounds when I use the sustain pedal. So the sustain pedal can really change the character of a piece and create a much softer, rounder, fuller sound. Here's another example, first without, then with the sustain pedal. Quite a difference, right? But how exactly do we use it? Usually, we can't push down the sustain pedal at the beginning of a piece and keep it down until the last note, because not all notes go well together. For example, if I hold the pedal and play a series of different chords, this will create a very dissonant sound. That's why we need to pay attention to harmonic changes. Whenever a piece enters a new harmony, which could be indicated by a chord symbol or a new bass note, it makes sense to lift the sustain pedal to let go of the old sounds and then push it down again for the new harmony. In many cases, harmonic changes happen from one bar to another, so as a rule of thumb, it often makes sense to lift and hold the sustain pedal for each bar. The more experience you have, the more you will learn to trust your ears. Now, what makes this a little tricky at first is the right timing of your foot's movement. It's likely that your initial impulse will be to move the sustain pedal in a parallel motion to your hand. For example, if you play 2 different chords, you might push the sustain pedal down together with the chord, then release both of them at the same time, and do the same thing for the next chord. However, we want to use the sustain pedal to bridge the gap between sounds while we move our hand. So when I lift my hand from the first chord, I want to keep holding the sustain pedal until I play the next chord. The same moment I play the second chord, I lift the pedal and push it right back down to enable my hand to move again. So my foot performs some kind of contrary motion to my hand. When my hand goes down, my foot goes up. Then the foot goes back down again, so I can lift my hand. Of course, the faster you perform the pedal release, the more flexible you'll be on the keyboard. So a very typical motion pattern for our foot would be that it spends most of the time holding down the pedal, interrupted by very short releases. A great way to practice this is to play different chords and perform this quick movement with your foot whenever you press the keys with your hand. could also play a pattern with your left hand, jumping between a bass note and a chord, and change the sustain pedal with every bass note. It's a bit like learning to drive. It takes a lot of concentration in the beginning, but soon your foot will just move automatically.